Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand. Joining me, as always, on a Sunday morning, my good friend over there in Chicago, Illinois today instead of New York, Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I'm good. It is, what time? It's about 10:15 a.m. local time, Chicago. It's already been a long day for me. I am running on a lot of artificial energy, and my only hope, Ty, is that it will sustain me through the show before I start snoring like a maniac.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was an early morning, but here I am. I'm ready to go, and it was a late night, early morning, watching at least a chunk of Michigan State ASU before finishing it early this morning. Let's see, there was Stanford USC. That sort of went
sort of a one-sided affair there, but yeah, that was a later
one-sided affair, but I watched because it was still a 2-possession game pretty late.
Sure.
So listen, am I going to complain? Absolutely not. I am ready to talk. I have lots of thoughts, Ty.
Good.
And I have
me too.
I'm going to try to generate my most dramatic reading of the season, which is only week 2. So
you have a real opportunity this week. We'll get to that momentarily.
The content is ideal.
Yes. Oh, it's tailor-made for whatever it is that you do with your dramatic readings. But we will get to that here in just a little bit. Welcome back to the show. Thank you for tuning back in. Week 2 now officially in the books. We're going to run you through all the notable action. Thank you to everyone who called in to our reverb line at 408-VERBAL-1. That's 408-837-2251. We had a substitute reverb producer this week. Our friend Ryan went to Clemson, who helped us out once last year. He helped us out again in lieu of our good friend and trusted deputy Taylor, who was off this weekend. We will get to those reverbs momentarily as well. As always, you can find the show at solidverbal.com. Tell your friends, tell your family. They can listen for free and find out more about how they can subscribe. Again, at solidverbal.com. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and there's a big old fancy subreddit started by Verballers for Verballers. It's reddit.com/r/solidverbal. Daniel, let's start where we usually start before the reverb. So the start before the start here. Mm-hmm. General takeaways from week 2. I have 4 of them that I jotted down on my paper. The first is, in true Ollie Williams fashion,
It's gonna rain!
We had a lot of rain games, a lot of weather situations going on in week 2.
It's been a sloppy couple weeks, yeah.
It's typically like this here on the East Coast at the start of the football season before the seasons really have a chance to settle into themselves. But we had, 3 weather delays very early on in that Louisville game. We had weather all throughout the Eastern Seaboard, whether you were up in Pittsburgh or if you were down in Texas. It was
hot down in Texas
system.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. Just an ugly weather situation going on in week 2. The other thing that I would point out is, hey, congratulations to Kansas for ending a 46-game road losing streak in their victory. Congratulations
Did you see the Lawrence PD tweet about it, by the way?
What's that?
Did you see the Lawrence Police Department, the Lawrence, Kansas Police Department tweet about a Kansas road win?
No. What'd they say?
It was the essence was like, I know this doesn't happen a lot, but this is just a friendly reminder that we celebrate a Kansas road win by not breaking the law at all. Which, great job, Lawrence PD. Great job.
All right. Nice. Also, congratulations to Kentucky ending their
oh my goodness, yes,
31-game losing streak against the Florida Gators. We will talk about this game. Not a great look for Florida, but a better look for Terry Wilson and Benny Snell in their efforts to knock off the Gators. The other thing that I'd point out is that you and I actually had a pretty good week. We did. Predicting these games. Now, I don't think you filled out your pick 'em pool this week.
Ty, you're putting me on blast in front of everybody. I know. Between our pick 'em pool and the Action Network, and they have me fill out stuff for my picks there. I always forget where I've actually made my picks, which is a roundabout way of saying I'm lazy, Ty, and I'm trying to be better.
Well, listen, I went something like 12-4 overall in our picks, and
wow, fade Ty next week. That's what the math says.
I was 8 for 10 in the Pick'em pool, the official Pick'em pool that we play at solidverbal.com/Pick'em. And I was on the first page of the leaderboard there. So I'm coming for you, man. I am coming for you.
I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's make it real.
So people have also been asking us, are you gonna have the balls to admit that you were wrong about Colorado? Or you gonna have the balls to admit that you were wrong about Kentucky, Dan? People putting us on blast here.
One of my very pleasant surprises of this early season is there is something about us that brings out the rage in Colorado fans, which who knew? Life is good in Boulder, Ty. Life is good on the West Coast. And Colorado was super bad last year. And we were just like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like they're going to be that good. And just, we're always wrong. Like, that's not a new thing with this show. And maybe Colorado will be really good. I mean, we can lead off with Colorado, Nebraska if we really want to. But I like that our supposed disrespect of so many teams comes out, and Colorado is the one with the fan base that has come out swinging. I love it. Great.
Absolutely. Well, look, I'm personally wrong about 17 times a day, just in general in life.
Same.
And for the most part, eating crow is not an event on this show. I know I did the Pilgrim thing at the live show, but that's the one exception. I'm happy to admit that Colorado looked pretty good through 2 weeks, and we'll get to that here. And I'm also happy to admit that we were wrong with the Kentucky game, which can we just address the fact that, I mean, we've already addressed the fact that there are angry Colorado fans. Can we now just not talk about the Colorado-Nebraska game at all? That would be so mean.
Yeah, that wouldn't be nice. So we'll get there.
All right, let's start the other place we usually start. Let's have a listen to your week 2 reverbs.
Dan, Ty, help. Hell is frozen over because Kentucky has just beaten Florida. The streak is dead.
Hey, this is Ryan from Minnesota.
Hi, guys. This is Aaron from Secaucus, New Jersey.
Dan, Ty, and Mark calling from Portland, Oregon.
Hey, this is Devin in Arizona. I just want to say, hey, Sparty, welcome to the House of Heat.
This is Richard in Spain. Ty, I'm going to need you to drop that sweet doodler because Nebraska ain't able to hold LaVista Chenault.
Brad from Boulder here. 3 words. LaVisca Chenault Junior.
I only got 3 words on my mind for week 2. LaVisca Chenault Jr.
At least during the off week, Scott Frost was able to look at the online course of Andy Reid's School of Clock Management.
Is it too early to give Kylan Hill the Heisman Trophy? I don't think it is. Kylan for Heisman. Start the hashtag right now.
Why do I have to wait until 4:40 p.m. Central Standard Time to watch good football? The football today has been snooze fest.
Is this the first recorded targeting penalty ejection from a punter? Watching this very strange Army Liberty game. New Mexico with the backdoor cover. Release the wolf. Oh!
Hi, Dan and Ty. This is Andrew calling from Naples, Florida. I just want to send my personal thanks to Brian Kelly for making a game plan to keep the game against Ball State as interesting as possible for as long as possible. You know, instead of just beating them by 50. Go Irish.
Elasico! I would just put Iowa State in the slowest and lowest crock pot of all time.
Well, we have just started the second half of El Asico, and it looks like we're just under 200 total yards for both teams. The question must be asked, is this the most Asico an El Asico game has ever been?
As a North Carolina Tar Heels fan, I gotta say, there should be a war on Larry Fedora's job status.
This is James from the great state of Kansas. We just won our first road game since I was 15. I don't have the emotional IQ to process this.
Florida State? What in the world, Willie Taggart? What are you doing? Samford?
Dan, Ty, Texas is fairly emphatically not back.
We just watched James Franklin challenge a fumble up 51-6 with a minute left in the fourth quarter. Pitt is back.
I see 51-6, and I go, somebody just got murdered.
Oh, Texas A&M, please don't lose it like that.
Sorry, Aggies. Clemson doesn't do Clemsoning anymore. Go Tigers!
I'm in my early 30s, and I just watched the Kentucky Wildcats beat the Florida Gators for the first time in my life.
This is Jeff calling from Frankfort, Kentucky, and for 31 long years, I have watched Florida beat Kentucky, and I have been burnt, and I have been heartbroken, especially the last 2 seasons. But here we go. My beloved Cats have finally beaten Florida. I'm a 38-year-old grown man, and I cried grown man tears because the last time Florida lost to Kentucky was when I was in kindergarten.
Cats, baby, cats. Nobody, and I mean nobody, beats Kentucky 32 years in a row.
Ding dong, the streak is dead. Whitfield streak, the Florida streak. Ding dong, the Florida streak is dead.
Dan, Ty, help. I need a Michigan State offense.
Listen, everyone, I know it's difficult, but don't you think it's about time you spoke to your children about an undefeated Herm Edwards?
All righty, there you go, Dan. Thank you again to our friend Ryan for putting those together. And thank you to the dozens upon dozens of verballers who called in, who texted in. Again, 408-VERBAL-1, 408-837-2251 remains one of my favorite parts of these shows that we do each and every week throughout the college football season. So the final reverb there was about Herm Edwards and Arizona State. And though there were bigger games that we are going to address here, let's start with Arizona State's late night upset over Michigan State. The final score was 16-13. I believe we both had this one pretty much nailed, did we not?
We did, and my reasoning didn't really have much to do with the outcome, but it was just that Michigan State doesn't really make usually huge statements early on in the season. They're able to sort of figure themselves out and figure out the top teams on their schedule, having some recent success against both Michigan and Ohio State. But early on in September, and we saw it last week against Utah State, and this week, which, by the way, I believe is the 10th straight Big Ten loss at Sun Devil Stadium.
That is correct, yes.
With 0 wins.
Arizona State is 10-0 all time versus the Big Ten at home.
Yes. So I watched a chunk of this game, and ASU in the first half, I believe, did not get on the scoreboard and really struggled, particularly on the ground, getting anything going against Sparty, which is not totally unexpected given what Michigan State brought back and what they've accomplished defensively. Brian Lewerke at times looked really good, but Michigan State just kept stalling. That offense just came to a halt way too often, and once again could not get any sort of push up front in the ground game. So if you like running the football, this game was your nightmare.
This game was not good. Michigan State, 2.3 yards per carry. Arizona State, just 1.5 yards per carry. By the way, this one was won on a game-winning 28-yard field goal by Brandon Ruiz as time expired. Michigan State,
excellent clock management, right?
Yeah, Michigan State was ranked 15th. My guess is that will come down. A huge game from Manny Wilkins through the air, a career high. He goes 30 for 48, 380 yards passing with a touchdown and an interception. He threw to Kyle Williams for 104 yards. He threw to N'Keal Harry, one of the best receivers in college football, for 89 yards and a touchdown. One notable point here on Arizona State. You know, we looked at the game from a week ago against UTSA, and I think we came away feeling pretty okay about what we saw, but it was against the Roadrunners, no disrespect to them.
And they committed a ton of penalties in that game, ASU.
Well, that's where I was going with it. 11 penalties for 95 yards against UTSA. This week, Dan, 4 penalties for 40 yards. So clearly they found a way to work through whatever it went on last week.
Yeah, and it speaks to, and everybody, including ourselves, you take your shots at the very unorthodox hire of Herm Edwards, but to score 3 points through 3 quarters and still have that, especially that offense focused, the defense for the most part, did a very, very good job, and they stoned Michigan State in the fourth quarter. But to maintain that focus, to maintain that confidence, it speaks to both the players and the coaches for keeping the Sun Devil heads on straight. And a great pass from Manny Wilkins, that sort of jump ball to N'Keal Harry, who was blanketed all game long and still put up some decent yardage. And going into the season, it was like, well, like the Herm Edwards ASU team with, probably more talent than Arizona, or maybe Kevin Sumlin, who's perhaps accomplished more in the college game and has some interesting offensive pieces. Let me tell you something about the Arizona schools, Ty. They're moving in two very different directions.
Yes, they are.
Right?
Like
as of week
passing
2
in the night. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that.
Well, congratulations to the Fighting Herms. Big upset here. 16-13 again, your final score, as Arizona State upsets the Michigan State Spartans. Yes. Let's move to a much, much bigger game in terms of national prominence. Clemson 28, Texas A&M 26. Wow. So we were both on A&M plus the points here. We both kind of had that feeling in the pit of our stomach. Like, we're not sure why, but we're feeling pretty confident that A&M's going to be able to cover a 10-point spread at home. For me,
it got up even higher, didn't it? Like 12 and a half. It was, there was money moving in the Clemson direction.
For sure. For me, the story of this game is twofold. First and foremost, I know we've got a segment at the end where we'll kind of announce these dudes in a group, but Kellen Mond, Dan. Gotta give him his props. 430 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions against Clemson, Dan? This is supposed to be one of the better defenses in the country, probably the best defensive line in the country. He was able to move the pocket. He was able to create plays with his legs, basically just run around until guys got open, and made some serious dude-like throws in this football game to give Texas A&M a fighting chance here. So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about Kellen Mond and what Jimbo Fisher has there at quarterback.
Sure. So your impression obviously was correct in that he exhibited more command than he showed last year in the final year of the Kevin Sumlin era. And a lot of that is, attributed to just coming in fresh and getting perhaps different coaching and feeling more comfortable in the offense. And it wasn't, in signs of trouble last year as obviously a more green quarterback, he would leave the pocket. He would try to make a play with, his feet, or he would just try to buy himself time instead of stepping in and making the throw. And I can't imagine there is any more scary, dangerous situation than stepping into a pocket as, Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins are collapsing everything. And he stood in, especially in the face of not being able to establish a run game, Texas A&M, and just kept, finding, it was mostly Kendrick Rogers, but not, he was spreading the ball around really nicely. But in those big moments, it was Kendrick Rogers who, in my head, as I was watching the game, as I kept seeing him add more and more yards to his total, I was like, oh, Kendrick Lamar, just more and more.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
I know. It's early season for everybody, including ourselves.
Right.
But yeah, Kellen Mond, total dude going against, a wall of a defensive line. And even on the Clemson side, even whether it was T. Higgins with the huge touchdown run from, after the catch from, I think it was Trevor Lawrence. Pretty early on in that game. And really Texas A&M coming back and showing fight in the game. We'll talk about, he's going to be a dude as well. Braden Mann. Just totally shifting field position and making Clemson earn every yard and every point with his boot of when I was watching this game, I was trying to remember where I had seen somebody wearing a giant oversized boot. And then I remembered it was the Simpsons Australia episode. Insulting the boot is a bootable offense.
Right.
Let me tell you about Texas A&M. That was a bootable offense. That was everything I wanted in a punter. And so with the Michael Dixon gone from the Longhorns, the boot is alive and well.
I was thinking more along the lines of Beer Fest, where they have Das Boot.
Das Boot as well, of course.
You can go so many different directions with it, but Brandon Mann, he was a weapon for Texas A&M in this game. My other point, actually, and I don't need to get too specific about this, but I'm a little taken aback by how good A&M looks right now. Like we had... Sure. We
talked about this before the season with how much experience they actually have.
Yeah, I mean, we had some obvious trepidation about what this program, what this system was going to look like now with an entirely new coaching staff. And look, it's an upgraded coaching staff, but it's still different, and the systems aren't necessarily that compatible. Jimbo Fisher seems to have a pretty good squad to work with here, and if they can play every game the way they did against Clemson, they're going to cause a ruckus in the SEC West. Like, they're not going to win it, but they're going to make some teams sweat it out for sure.
Hated, by the way, no, you're totally right. And hated the fact that the game didn't come down to it, but it obviously was a pivotal moment, the fumble through the end zone touchback.
See, I don't have a problem with this rule.
Why?
I don't have a problem with it. I never have. Hold on to the damn
anything. Ball. I obviously hold on to the ball, and I don't think you should just get a do-over from wherever you fumbled it. I would be in favor of advocating the 21, the basketball game you play with 2 or 3 people,
right?
And if you don't, if you basically everybody has different words for it. If you crash or whatever, and you have to score you have to score exactly 21. If you get to 20, obviously you can't score exactly 21 because baskets are worth 2. You have to go back to 13. I'd be fine with going back to the 20-yard line. If you fumble it at the goal line, it goes out of the end zone.
I'm okay with this rule. So what Dan's talking about, for those of you who didn't watch the game, Texas A&M with 2 minutes left fumbled the ball through the end zone. Courtney Davis had the ball. It was punched out by a Clemson defender. It went through the end zone, and it was ruled a touchback, which obviously changes possession and gave Clemson the ball. It was a pivotal moment in the game, as Clemson did only win the game by 2 points. 28-26. I think overall Clemson's going to be fine. A&M is probably going to be better off than we thought coming into the season. We did see some time from Trevor Lawrence in this one. As you mentioned, he did throw the pretty touchdown pass, but it was notable that Kelly Bryant was the one that they went to and gave the ball to when it counted. So we're going to see Trevor Lawrence. We're going to continue to see him throughout the course of the year, but Kelly Bryant at this point in time, after week 2, is clearly still the guy that Dabo Swinney has the most confidence in when the going gets tough.
Yeah, and it should also be mentioned that even after that fumble, they did get the stop against Clemson. The Texas A&M defense got the ball back, scored, and were within a 2-point conversion of tying it, sending it to overtime. So Texas A&M maintains the focus and still put themselves in a position to extend the game, which
absolutely
encouraging. And they have, I think, Bama in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
We'll see. All right. Stanford 17, USC 3, Daniel. It was the fewest points that USC has scored against Stanford since 1941, and the fewest points in a game for USC since 1997. As I said at the top, this really was a one-sided game. It was driven in large part by a really strong effort from Stanford's defense. They sacked JT Daniels 4 times. They forced 3 turnovers. That being said, USC did have their chances in this football game. They got inside the Stanford 40-yard line on 6 different occasions and obviously only came away with a field goal. So,
yes.
This is kind of what we were alluding to when we did our preview. USC turned it on in the second half in week 1 against UNLV, but it was a much, much different equation going on the road with a true freshman quarterback to Palo Alto against a team that we know plays good defense, and in this football game was able to assert itself on the ground with Bryce Love and 4 returning offensive linemen. A much, much different equation this time.
Yeah, and I would say going into this game, we still didn't really have a concept for what Stanford's defense was going to do against a top flight team, either in the conference or outside of the conference. But to stone USC like they did, especially in the red zone, to collapse, especially up front where they were replacing a good amount, at least of starters, to go at USC and JT Daniels and harass him and keep him uncomfortable should go a long way, because Stanford is all too comfortable to, we're going to give it to Bryce Love and see what happens. Oh, you're going to commit 7-8 guys to Bryce Love? We're going to throw it up to our giant tight ends and wide receivers. Right. Something's got to give. Even though KJ Costello didn't look like an all Pac-12, an all-American, whatever, he was totally good. He was fine. It was not his best performance going against a pretty tough USC, at least back half of that defense. Stanford looked good. Stanford looked complete, and Stanford even with the chances USC had in the red zone closer to the end zone, and they may obviously JT Daniels throws a couple of picks, Stanford was in control. Samford was just in control, which at home against a team with the questions that USC has, very impressive from the Cardinal. And I'm not terribly worried about USC. They'll be fine. They're just not ripe. That's all it is.
Agreed. And Stanford, for their part, you mentioned the offense. KJ Costello didn't quite have the same performance he had a week ago, but didn't turn the ball over, which is huge, of utmost importance. And Bryce Love had 22 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown. So he's starting to get going as well. It was good to see that against a much, much better team than San Diego State. No disrespect to San Diego State, but...
And Stanford's schedule is about to get very real.
It's about to get real. I was just going to go there. They've got Oregon in week 4, and then the following week, they've got Notre Dame. Both of those games, by the way, on the road. They've got UC Davis, I believe, next week. The fearsome Aggies.
Listen, it's not intramurals, brother. It's Big West. Is it Big West football? Is that where UC Davis? It's Dan Hawkins. Come on. UC Davis is all right.
USC also has Texas next week, which is probably not the game that everyone had hoped for when it was initially scheduled.
And last year's game was good. Last year's game was fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Stanford wins 17-3. Let's go to Georgia 41. South Carolina 17, Dan.
I'm just preparing the meat.
That tenderizes it.
That tenderizes it in a big way. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Georgia rushes for 271 yards as a team. They were led by Elijah Holyfield, who had 76 yards, led by DeAndre Swift, who had the most carries of any ball carrier on the team with 12. Mm-hmm. South Carolina, Dan, just could not run the ball against the Georgia front. That's really good. And they turned it over to Jake Bentley to throw it 47 times. You could look at the box score and not even the actual score and know sort of how this one unfolded, Dan. 41-17, Georgia pulls away. I believe I said 35-17 is my official prediction. So 41-17 felt about right.
Yeah, you're right. I sort of I doubted Georgia just a little too much in this game after watching the first few minutes. Like, oh yeah, whoops, that's on me.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much to add on this game, Dan. I watched the whole game and I feel it kind of went as I expected. And Georgia is, they're really good. South Carolina maybe not ready to challenge for the crown in the SEC East, but I think given the landscape elsewhere in the SEC East, South Carolina is positioned pretty well as probably the number 2 team at this point.
I would say definitely not ready to challenge for the SEC East. And it was the disappointing thing yesterday was the entire list of South Carolina memorable moments was, the trick play touchdown early on.
Yeah.
And then it was like going into that game, and a couple of the mistakes early in the passing game were not necessarily on Jake Bentley with the tipped interception, whatever. The game plan of, all right, so we're just going to go with 4-yard crossing routes and that's it. And we're just going to go underneath like tiny little hit. Like it was just to go against a defense that is going to be as good as Georgia's or as good as Alabama's or as Clemson's. And we saw this with Texas A&M's game plan. You got to take shots. You have to do something where like we are underdogs for a reason. We cannot, play into an excellent defense's hand by forcing them to make easy tackles underneath. And I was just not impressed with what South Carolina came out doing. And the trick play was nice, but the creativity downfield just wasn't there against, new corners, a new group of starters for this Georgia defense. And going into a week like this, you and I both say this in these types of weeks where we're like, well, it doesn't look like it's going to be all that fun or good. That's when the weird stuff starts happening. And Georgia hears that and they say, no.
They just turn the crock pot up.
It might be weird, but not on this field. Not on this field.
Not up in here. Not up in here.
Jake Fromm was really, really good, short of the miscommunication pick, which probably wasn't on him early. And even with a new look backfield, McCole Hardman was really good in the receiving game. Georgia looks excellent, and that should scare everybody given the changes that they've gone through since last year.
All right, Penn State 51, Pitt 6. Ooh. A rainy night in Pittsburgh. I had friends who were there. They were texting me. It was very rainy, very yucky. Heinz Field doing its part to stay yucky. It's never been a nice field. And Pitt, shot themselves in the foot every time they had to deal with a wet ball on special teams, whether it was an extra point or a field goal or a punt. All that stuff came back to bite them. And PSU just went a lot of Miles Sanders, KJ Hamler, Trace McSorley getting the job done when he had to, and James Franklin very clearly running up the score.
Yeah, and if Pat Narduzzi had all of Penn State's players playing against Penn State and Penn State had Pitt players, he'd do the same thing.
Yep.
He would absolutely do the same thing. Credit Pitt for being consistent in all three phases of the game, being terrible in all three phases. Oh, I'm so sorry, Pitt. I like you plenty. Yeah, Kenny Pickett was not that good. The lone bright spot was probably Kadri Ollison, who busts out a couple of nice runs for them in the rain. But damn, does Miles Sanders look like...
He looks good.
88.5% of Saquon Barkley.
He looks real good.
Which is pretty nuts, and not a great day for, I think Ricky Slade coughed the ball up.
Yep.
But outside of some sloppiness early for Penn State, and this is to be expected with how many changes on offense there are with this team. They start slow last week against App State. They start a little bit slow in the weather this week against Pitt, but KJ Hamler is looking like a pretty significant all-purpose weapon. He scores on the ground and through the air.
Yep.
Like a jet sweep touchdown and a receiving touchdown. So Penn State rounding into form, perhaps not with the ceiling that they had last year, as they were immediately striking teams and laying waste to them. But that's okay, because when you beat a team by 45, and as you put it going in, tearing Pitt limb from limb.
That's right.
Which did upset some Pitt people.
To your credit, you also picked Penn State to win
I did.
the game.
Yes.
I don't know if either of us thought it was going to be 45 points.
Not with the fleshy drama that you laid out.
No, exactly. People were spooked by what they saw from Penn State in week 1 against App State. But, oh, by the way, App State destroyed Charlotte in their game, and Zach Thomas, their quarterback, went 14 of 14 for 295 and 3 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown on their way to victory. So this is a pretty good App State team that Penn State beat in week 1. Granted, they have some rough edges they still need to sand off, but they looked good in week 2 here. Again, 51-6 was your final over Pitt. Colorado 33, Nebraska 28. This might have been the best pure TV show.
Oh yeah,
on Saturday. It was their first.
This are Clemson A&M. Yeah,
it was their first meeting since 2010, the last year of the Big 12. Colorado scores a touchdown with 1 minute and 24 seconds left in the third quarter to make it 28-27 Nebraska. The ensuing drives went as follows, Dan. Missed field goal for Nebraska. Missed field goal for Colorado. Turnover on downs for Nebraska. Turnover on downs for Colorado. Interception for Nebraska. Missed field goal for Colorado. Nebraska punt. Colorado touchdown. Nebraska turnover on downs to end the football game. It went back and forth in that final 16 minutes in such a manner that you wondered whether either team wanted to win the football game. A lot went wrong in that final stretch of the game. We saw Adrian Martinez go down after throwing a back-breaking interception. This game had a little bit of everything. What I would say is that Colorado, yes, does look better than I thought. And in particular, Stevie Montez in the Chenault has a nice big bandy feel to it, if we say it enough. Montez had a monster game, 351, 3 touchdowns. LaVisca Chenault, who clearly we're going to talk about at the end when we do our big group of dude alerts, 10 receptions, 177 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 carries for 5 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Colorado may just be better than we thought, Dan.
I think that's for sure a reality, that Colorado is better than we thought. We were pretty low and pretty down on Colorado. I mean, to start at the top of things, Nebraska came out and looked despite Adrian Martinez looking surprisingly comfortable as a rhythm thrower, as a runner, he gets in the end zone on the long run. 2 early turnovers where the slop was real for Nebraska's offense, which is, again, to be expected. New coach, new system, whatever. Colorado did a great job taking advantage and looked a lot more organized on offense, especially through the passing game between Montez and Laviska Shenault than I think we could have anticipated going into the season based on what the offense looked like at times last year. But yes, the game was super back and forth in the second half. Some ugliness, some bad kicking, just like Scott Frost's hat, just a little bit off.
A little bit off,
just a little bit to the side in the kicking game.
A little bit askew,
Yeah, Colorado, but through the air a lot. Montez had some very nice throws, not always going downfield a ton, but when he did, he found the right dude. I think Laviska Shenault had a touchdown lining up in like a wildcat direct snap kind of thing. And the Nebraska fourth quarter was surprisingly, and they bring in Andrew Bunch, the former walk-on, when Adrian Martinez gets hurt, but the clock management was particularly bad. And I stood up so happy, not because I was rooting for either one of these teams, but when Nebraska was driving at the end of the game, to see Colorado say, "You're going to beat us with a walk-on quarterback with this final play. We're coming after you.
Yep.
And we're going to make you earn it in a calm, quick decisioned way." And he didn't. No. And I love that call. I love, blitzing that inexperienced quarterback when he has to make a huge throw to win a game.
No,
and
totally.
I loved it. I stood up so happy. So a great win for Colorado. And you don't want to get I don't want to get ahead of myself, because this Nebraska team is going to take some lumps this year and was not returning a ton on defense. So I just want to put that in the correct context. But Colorado fans, you have to be pumped up. No love lost between these two ties.
And you mentioned Nebraska's defense. I actually thought they looked pretty good in the trenches, just in general. They had 7 sacks.
It was the back half,
14 tackles for loss. They did seem to assert their will after going down early. Remember, this was the first game of the year for them after their week 1 game got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
They also rushed for over 300 yards. Both Adrian Martinez and Greg Bell went over 100 yards. Nebraska, I thought, acquitted themselves pretty well in week 1 in what's a new system, a new era completely now under Scott Frost. They're going to get better. And Adrian Martinez, you're right, looked really mature, looked really comfortable very early on before he got hurt. So we hope he's okay. Scott Frost did seem to indicate that the early prognosis looks, quote, semi-encouraging. So we'll see what that means moving forward. But I thought a good showing for them and an even better showing for Colorado as they win 33-28 here.
Yeah. And if Colorado wants to build on this, they're going to need to shore up that front against the run, because that is the thing that, Colorado they can't win. What was this? 33-28. They can't win 45-41 every week, because teams will be happy to just keep it on the ground and keep Laviska Shenault. And this hurts all of us off the field.
So we're going to stay with the Big Ten and round out what went on in the Big Ten Conference. But first, I did need to mention that the deal is still ongoing with The Athletic.
Yes.
So if you go to theathletic.com/solidverbal, you can sign up now and get 40% off your first year's subscription. That comes out to about $2.99 a month. It's great stuff. I wanted to tell you, I don't know if you've done this yet. I have fully integrated the game recaps into my early Sunday morning research that I do before we hit record.
Oh, and it's so nice, all within the app. Yeah, I love it.
I have fully integrated it into my workflow now. And it's really just a good way to get insider information about what's going on. We'll talk about Notre Dame here in just a little bit, but to wake up early, load up the app, and read what Pete Sampson has to say about Notre Dame's offensive experiment yesterday against Ball State, that to me is just sort of good to have in the back pocket. It makes me more informed, not only as someone who does a podcast, but also someone who's just a big-time fan of college football. There's a lot of good stuff out there from many of our friends who have been on the podcast. We've gotten so much great feedback from people who have already signed up for The Athletic. We're pumped up that the deal is ongoing. So theathletic.com/solidverbal, exclusively for Verballers, you can get 40% off your very first year's subscription. Go on out there, check it out. It's going to make your season all the more enlightened.
Yes, and the common refrain has been, "How did I not do this sooner?"
Yeah,
I was waiting to pull the trigger. How did I not do this sooner? And Ty, like you've said for years now, there's nothing better than waking up Sunday morning and curling up with Pete Sampson. You've said that over and over again, and now everybody can do that. No problemo.
Just $2.99 a month. That's all it's going to cost you.
Done. Easy. Love it.
All right, let's go to Iowa State.
Oh no. Must we?
13-3 was your final, Dan. I suspect this is the game that you've been saving your dramatic drive chart reading for.
No comment until after. I mean, do you want to lead with this, Ty?
Sure.
To just like really paint the picture.
Let's do it.
What people were in for. And there are positives to take away from this game, Ty. There are obviously positives, but let's start here. This is not the second half. This is not the first half. This is not a particular chunk of drives. This is the game.
This is the entire game.
Punt, field goal, punt, missed field goal, punt, field goal, punt, end of half, punt, field goal, downs, missed field goal, punt. Touchdown, punt, fumble, end of game. This was like going to the park and watching two old people play tennis who are very consistent, but just right down the middle. Boop, bop. This was a pong of a football
They're
game.
playing to volley, not to score.
This is what it felt like. The defenses actually did show up, but in terms of offensive creativity, in terms of stretching the field, in terms of, finding a playmaker in a little bit of space, this was not this.
This was not.
Be watching more of Georgia Tech USF. Yeah,
Iowa looked superior in the trenches.
For sure, they did.
They looked really good in the trenches. It's a continued theme from a week ago, where Iowa looked dominant with their defensive front. That again was the story here. Offensively, they left a lot to be desired. These teams combined to go 10 of 31 on third downs. As you may have guessed from Dan's dramatic reading, Kyle Kempt actually injured his MCL in this game.
To see that.
Matt Campbell doesn't think it's going to be too big of a deal, but obviously that's going to be something to watch moving forward. He, of course, being their veteran quarterback who had a pretty nice year last year after taking over the job. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of inspiration to draw from this win one way or the other. Typically, we've seen a game like this when it comes down to Iowa and Iowa State. So I'm just happy on my end. I was right about the final outcome here. Mm-hmm. And I considered at one point locking up Iowa. I'm just glad I didn't, because then I would have had to watch this game. And yeah, that just wasn't a whole lot of fun.
If you're going to leave a lot to be desired, at least on offense, come away with a win. That's a really good takeaway for Iowa, who, again, is looking like they did last year on the ground, struggling to get a push on the ground. But Nate Stanley was fine. He did not torpedo this game at all. This was not one of his better games, but he was not a disaster at all. It was just, and the Iowa State defense came to play as well. I was impressed with this Iowa State defense, and I think it has some meaning moving forward. But when Iowa State loses somebody like, and it's not a one-man team. The 2017 team was not all Duke of Hazzard, Alan Lazard, but there was a sense of, what can we do away from David Montgomery to give him some room? And the answer was not much.
Nope, not
David
much.
Montgomery really did struggle to find lanes to make something happen, and so did Iowa. And this is definitely not my term. I've seen it in a couple places, and it's a coaching thing. It's how good is your bad? And Iowa's was good enough. And especially early on, as you're trying to find footing, the takeaway is Iowa's 2-0, and that's fine, because they're probably going to continue to improve, especially that they can fall back on that defense, which was just stupid good once again. So that's good.
I'm going to rifle through the other Big Ten games here and just give you scores and a couple highlights. Ohio State 52, Rutgers 3, big game for Dwayne Haskins. Tate Martell came in, went 10 for 10. Ohio State, still has some penalty cleanup to do, as they had 11 for 120 in this game, but they've got a big game coming up in a week against TCU that we'll preview. Also, Wisconsin 45-14 over New Mexico, a career high in rushing yardage for our friend Jonathan Taylor, tailback. He has 253 yards and 3 touchdowns. Michigan 49, Western Michigan 3. Shea Patterson, 12 of 17, had 3 touchdowns, no picks. A big game on the ground for the Michigan Wolverines, 308 yards as a team led by Karan Higdon and Chris Evans. Also, Maryland, 45-14 over Bowling Green. A big day on the ground for Maryland with 440 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Indiana beats Virginia 20
Your
to 16.
Indiana Hoosiers.
That's right. Led by Steve Scott, the big old freshman. Scotty Too Hotty to the tune of 31 carries and 204 yards and a touchdown. Eastern Michigan knocks off Purdue. Illinois moves to 2-0 with a win over Western Illinois. And finally, Minnesota 21, Fresno State 14. This was a wild finish here. Fresno was down 7 on the 4-yard line. They elect for a fullback pass, Dan.
Love
fullback
the play
pass.
call.
Yeah.
But just a beat too late.
Antoine Winfield Jr. comes out of nowhere to pick the ball off, essentially giving Minnesota the victory. So, shall we move on to the SEC?
Yeah, quickly, just to respond to all of those things. I swear I'm in rifle mode, Ty. I promise you. Dwayne Haskins, 2017 backup might be better than 2017 starter. Just ridiculous. A slow start for Wisconsin, but you're right. Jonathan Taylor, tailback, excellent. Needs to stop dropping the ball. That would be my only note there. Michigan, not a huge surprise. Karan Higdon with a huge day. They especially wanted to make an offensive statement after the Notre Dame game. Good for Duke, down day for Northwestern, but Duke looked good. EMU, let's not just skip over the fact that Eastern Michigan beat Purdue. That's ridiculous. Great for especially through the air. Love to see that. Maryland, another slow start, but great second half. Your Indiana Hoosiers, nothing more to add. Illinois is a third of the way on their drive to 6. And yes, the final play by Antoine Winfield was amazing for Minnesota. Beating Fresno State is not an insignificant thing. This is probably one of the best 4 or 5 G5 schools. And for Minnesota, with how they finished last year, to come out and win that game, great for the Gophers. Let's move on.
All right, moving to the SEC. Mississippi State 31, K-State 10. Woo! The only downside I could see in this game for Mississippi State, 11 penalties and 1 interception from Nick Fitzgerald. Otherwise, they outgained K-State 538 to 213. Monster games for Nick Fitzgerald and Kylan Hill on the ground. There is a very, very good chance that Mississippi State's going to be undefeated at the start of October when they start getting to some tougher SEC competition. And I, for one, am genuinely excited to see how they fare against the better teams. This team looks pretty darn good.
Yeah, they're going to need to clean up a little bit of accuracy issues through the air. Keaton Thompson last week, who had, made huge plays, and Nick Fitzgerald this week, they don't complete a ton of passes. So we'd like to see 50 to 60% of passes completed. But in watching this game, when they were so dominant on the ground, especially you mentioned Kylan Hill, Mississippi State is in a good place. And I think if nothing else, this is a team that's going to be led by what they do on the ground.
100%. Big win for Mississippi State on the road here. We had talked about this game before the start of the year as a sneaky good week 2 game. It ended up not being that good of a week 2 game. Mississippi State dominated here to the tune of 31-10. Elsewhere in the SEC, Kentucky 27, Florida 16, Dan.
Long live the streak. The streak is over.
You watched this game with our friend Richard Johnson, who is a Florida alum. Is that correct?
Correct. I've watched way too many games with Florida alums these past few years, but I do like Richard.
How did Richard take this?
Poorly. And it's one of those things where this Florida team is not where Florida was in terms of talent, at least these past couple of years anyway. Obviously not what they were before that, but Felipe Franks he's a bit of a struggle at quarterback. Yeah. He's constantly off by about 3 feet, which is too many feet, Ty. And, there were like back shoulder pass attempts, and we were joking that it was, attempting to be back shoulder to a Florida player, but it was really like front neck of a Kentucky player. That's where his passes ended up. And this Florida offense will probably be good eventually under Dan Mullen, or at least more competent than what they showed. But I think more credit has to be given to Kentucky, what they did on defense staying in this game. Terry Wilson, the JC transfer, comes in and he has 3 touchdowns and goes for over 100 on the ground and through the air.
Yeah.
And then Benny Snell is just a full-on workhorse dude.
Yeah.
In almost the way that Le'Veon Bell was for Michigan State near the end of his
Oh my God, yeah.
party.
Benny Snell was patient. He found the holes when they were there. He didn't try to do too much out there, just stayed within himself, ran for 175 yards, looked very mature as a runner. And Terry Wilson, let me come back to him for a second. If he doesn't turn the ball over twice in the first half, Kentucky would have had more breathing room.
Definitely.
Much more breathing room in this game. They were the better
hell of a last play,
team.
by the way.
Oh, yeah. Weird ending. So the I wanted to mention this if we had time. A weird ending here as Kentucky basically gets a turnover, but the guy who gets the turnover isn't sure that it's a live ball. He's on the verge of handing it off to an official, at which point he realizes that, no, live ball. He's tackled by a Florida lineman, I believe, and falls into the end zone to make this one 27-16. Is that right?
Yeah, this play almost took like 30 seconds to unfold, which is a very long time. It was essentially a Felipe Franks Hail Mary. He gets hit as he's throwing it, and from the wide angle, it looks like his arm is moving forward, but it turns out he's hit, the ball comes out, and it's just sort of moved forward by his wrist, so clearly not in a throwing motion. And Kentucky picks up the ball, and everybody is just assuming it's an incomplete pass, but the refs don't blow the whistle or anything. And the guy, he starts to hand it to the ref, and the ref is like, I didn't blow a whistle, dude. And he's just slowly by the end, Mark Stoops is yelling for him to run towards the end zone, and he does. And game ends on a touchdown that nobody thought was going to exist, but turns out it did. So just a really cool story for Kentucky to break that streak.
Alabama 57, Arkansas State 7 to Tagovailoa. 228 and 4 touchdowns. Big game for the Harris Ranch. The most notable thing about Alabama is that they go to Ole Miss next week in a game that could be a lot of fun. Now, Ole Miss trailed 38-35 at half against Southern Illinois, at which point they decided to turn on the Jets. The final score was 76-41 in favor of Ole Miss. Huge games for A.J. Brown, Braylon Sanders, DK Metcalf. Obviously, Jordan Ta'amu with 448 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. What I like about Ole Miss at this point, Dan, especially from our perspective, we know exactly what Ole Miss is. Ole Miss is going to score points. You're not going to turn to them looking for any kind of great defensive showing. Next week against Alabama will be nothing if not interesting. I don't think they'll beat Alabama because Alabama is pretty darn good in all facets of the game. But will they score points against Alabama? They will score points against Alabama, Dan. They will keep it interesting for some period of time.
I mean, Ole Miss is Texas Tech in slacks.
That's right.
That's what they are, which is wonderful. They have probably the best receiving core in the country. They have an exciting quarterback. They're going to put a ton through the air, and they're going to allow a ton. And I mean, you sort of went over it quickly, but Alabama, what they did to a totally decent Arkansas State team. This is not a Southern Conference opponent. Arkansas State is one of the better teams in the Sun Belt, if not a favorite in the Sun Belt. They dropped 40 on them in the first half. They're looking like the Warriors, where you would look at a Warriors score in the middle of the second quarter. Does Golden State have 77 points with 3 minutes before halftime? That's what this Alabama offense under Tua is looking like. And that's just filthy. And you're right about Ole Miss, and that game will be fun for a quarter and a half. But Alabama is looking like a train, like a souped up train, which is not fair.
Another big game next week will be between Auburn and LSU, both of whom won handily. Auburn went just 2 of 10 on third downs, but they did gain 567 yards, scored 63 points, focused most of their attention in this game on the rushing effort, had 429 as a team. We will talk more about Auburn and LSU next week on our preview show on Wednesday, but that's an interesting game for a variety of reasons. Elsewhere in the SEC, Tennessee wins big, Missouri wins big, Vandy wins by 31, and Arkansas actually loses to our favorite team, Colorado State. I have yet to figure out Colorado State. Arkansas has yet to figure out its true quarterback situation because it was a little rocky in this one, but 34-27 as Colorado State knocks off the Razorbacks.
Shout out Preston Williams. Huge day stepping in for Michael Gallup as he moves on to the NFL. And Colorado State, after 2 pretty disastrous performances in the first week 0 and week 1, coming out and beating Arkansas. Nice little statement for the Rams. I like it.
All right, very quickly, today's show also brought to you in part by our good friends over at Bombas. Dan, they're back.
Oh my God. I'm wearing them right now, Ty. No joke.
BOMBAS.com is the website. Thanks to 2 years of research and development and multiple design improvements, performance and comfort is the name of the game at Bombas. They're the most comfortable socks in the history of feet. They've got an arch support system that provides extra support where you need it most, and a cushioned footbed that's reinforced for comfort without the added bulkiness. Feels like something's hugging your foot, which I really like. They also stay up. They don't fall down. They've got extra soft cotton, which makes you want to keep them on all day, every day. So whether you're a runner or a power walker or a power lounger, whatever, Bombas has a pair that will add comfort to your life. Bombas sponsored the show way back when. They were one of our very first sponsors. And so we've had, I don't know how many pairs of Bombas in each of our drawers now for many, many years.
Yeah, they've
Bombas
definitely
socks.
updated their offerings since,
oh my God,
our first campaign with them. Yeah.
So we're all about the Bombas experience. They're going to be with us here for the next couple of weeks. We would encourage everyone to go on out to bombas.com, BOMBAS.com/solid. And when you use the code SOLID, you will get 20% off your very first order. So check it out, bombas.com/solid. Use the code SOLID, 20% off your very first order. Looking forward to bringing them back on board and talking more about our experience with Bombas.
Ty, you're only as comfortable as your feet are, and Bombas is... It's a spa on your foot. And anytime I open my sock drawer and I see that it's a Bombas day, that I have a clean pair, it's a good day, Ty. It's just a good day. Can't recommend them enough.
Also brought to you today by ZipRecruiter. There are job sites that send you tons of the wrong resumes to sort through, or they make you want to wait for the right candidates to apply to your job. That is not the right way to go about it. Not in a world that has ZipRecruiter in it. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/solid. And they'll help you hire the right person because they don't depend on candidates finding you. They actually go out proactively and find them. They have powerful matching technology that will scan thousands of resumes and identify people with the right skills and education and experience for your particular job. It actively invites those people to apply to your job so you get qualified candidates fast. Don't have to sift through all the wrong resumes. No more waiting for the right candidates to apply. ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the United States. It's a good service, Dan. A good service. You can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/solid. That's ZipRecruiter.com/solid. ZipRecruiter is absolutely the smartest way to hire.
It's that last second Colorado blitz. It's being proactive to get the job done. I love it.
All right, let's go to ACC action, and let's start with Notre Dame because they're kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge in the ACC.
Diet ACC team, yeah.
24-16 was your final score here, Dan. You watched this game at all?
Every second I was watching another game.
I'm sure you were just transfixed by this football game.
Always, Ty. Always was I transfixed by football games during the Notre Dame game, yeah.
I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because we have many other games that we want to rifle through here. Okay. All I'm going to say is that Brandon Wimbush is back, baby.
That's so mean.
He's back.
He made some good throws. You know he did.
I'm sorry, but he made some good throws is not good enough at this point.
Okay.
Here's what happened. Whether Notre Dame admits it or not, they were trying something out in this game. And that thing was they were trying to keep Brandon Wimbush in the pocket and not have him run whenever he felt distressed.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon Wimbush had guys that were open. And he had a lot of time to throw in most cases because the opponent was Ball freaking State.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Wimbush threw 0 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions. I did not think he looked good at all in this football game. There was part of me down the stretch that was actively wondering if Ball State was going to find a way to come back and tie it.
Mm-hmm.
It did not work out, thankfully, for those of us pulling for Notre Dame. But not a good effort. Not a good effort from Notre Dame. If they drop from 8th in the polls, you'll know exactly why. This was an uninspired, unimpressive offensive effort. they need to get better. They need to get better because in 2 weeks, the schedule starts getting tougher. This isn't going to suffice against better defenses. I know it worked last week against Michigan. Still not entirely sure I understand that one, but they've got a couple weeks now to shore this back up and get things moving in a better direction. This was a really bad effort.
Did anybody pop for you, even with an overall inability to distance themselves from Ball State? I saw, it appears Tavon Coney had a nice game.
Very nice game, yeah.
It appears Miles Boykin was a bright spot of the offense. So
yeah, it's not all doom and gloom.
Anything positive to take away?
It's not all doom and gloom. They won. I'm continually impressed with this newfound safety play that they have, because that's been a bit of a Achilles heel for them over the last 10 years or so. So I think defensively they're fine. They held Ball State to 16 points. You hold anyone to 16 points, you should win.
Right.
So it's not on the defense. The offense needs to get better.
Yeah.
Just needs to get better.
And a first-year defensive coordinator. Sure.
All right. Let's move on. Florida State, speaking of needing to get better. Florida State 36, Samford 26. If Samford does not turn the ball over 5 times, there's a pretty good chance they win this football game, Dan.
This is true. They were in it despite that, yeah.
In it despite that. Devlin Hodges for Samford threw for 475 yards against Florida State, Dan.
Yeah. And the defense was supposedly the unit that was going to be in better shape going into this season. And DeAndre Francois started terribly. Cam Akers never really got loose on offense. And yeah, the story to me was that Samford just fearlessly going after Florida State and succeeding for a really good chunk of this game. Yeah. Like scaring the bejesus out of Florida State until the Noles in the fourth quarter were able to sort of come back and seal this game. But not a good early reflection, and it's going to take time to install this offense and to get everybody on board. But if you're not in a position of at least comfort against Samford, no disrespect intended, but Florida State should be on a different plane no matter who the coach is.
Yeah.
And Devlin Hodges just looked at Florida State and said, yeah, okay, I can deal with this.
Florida State had 9 penalties. They went 4 of 14 on third downs. Their offensive line struggled, again, against Samford. Just a lot of mistakes across the board. The one bright spot that I would point out for Florida State, a week ago, 0 for 4 in the red zone against Virginia Tech. Granted, Samford, a much different team, but 3 for 3 last night in the red zone. They need to continue improving the rest of their offense the way they did in the red zone last night. Also, I would point out very quickly, and we can talk about this more on Wednesday because I have deep thoughts on this. Florida State now has a turnover backpack. Did you see this?
No, I did not.
We can talk more about this on Wednesday. I will come armed.
Is it a full-on backpack? Is it a satchel? Is it a messenger bag?
No, it's a full-on red backpack.
Okay. All right. The thing that would concern me with Florida State more than the backpack is they've got some decent offenses coming up this season. And then they play Florida. So at least there's that. Right. But there's, they have Clemson, they have Miami, they have Louisville, they have your boy Grungy Eric Dungy next week.
That's right.
They have what looks like an improved Boston College offense, at least. They have Notre Dame, who, Ian Book might be in a rhythm by then.
Sure.
There's a little bit to worry about.
All right. Elsewhere in the ACC, very quickly, Louisville 31, Indiana State 7. Again, I mentioned the weather delays. This game was tied 7-7 at half before Louisville turned it on. Duke wins 21-7 over Northwestern. A nice game from Daniel Jones, who had 3 touchdowns. Also, the final 32 minutes and 18 seconds of this game were scoreless. So I hope you enjoyed the first 28. We had Virginia Tech 62 over Bill and Mary, who only scored 17. Miami 77-0 over Savannah State. N'Kosi Perry saw some time and threw 3 touchdowns in this game.
A nice arm.
Yeah.
Nice arm. Yeah.
Boston College, you mentioned, 62-14 over Holy Cross. A big game from A.J. Dillon, who had 6 carries for 149 and 3 touchdowns. I think they yanked him after the first quarter or something like that. Also, Holy Cross blocked 2 punts for touchdowns, which is
hell
notable.
Yeah.
NC State 41, Georgia State 7. Ryan Finley had 370 through the air. Grungy Eric Dungy with 5 touchdowns as Syracuse beats Wagner 62-10. Wake Forest beats Towson 51-20. And ECU runs one up on North Carolina by a 41-19 score. Finally, in the ACC, I did need to mention another fun game from Saturday. South Florida 49, Georgia Tech 38. This game featured 9 lead changes, 87 points, and 1,124 yards of total offense. Here, South Florida led by Blake Barnett, who threw for 202 and 2 touchdowns through the air, and also ran for 91 and scored 2 more touchdowns on the ground. This was the Adam Amin game.
Yeah, I think the Adam Amin game is the new Gus game.
It could be. Yeah.
I think that's, I mean, we're obviously quite biased here, but super fun game. Did not enjoy seeing Taquan Marshall go out early, but he did come back. Kervonte Benson leaves this game. But Blake Barnett, full-on good quarterback.
Yeah.
That is the reality, full-on good dual threat quarterback. I think it was Terrence Horn who had 2 kick return touchdowns, a receiver for USF. So in a game, USF wins by 11 to get those 14 points. Pretty clutch against this Georgia Tech offense that did not, when sort of everybody was out there, they run for 400 and pass for almost 200. So South Florida needed every point they could get as they struggled with this Tech offense, and just full on exciting game. That's all it was to me. It was if the best TV show is Colorado, Nebraska, this game was not far behind.
Let's move to the Big 12 here, Dan. Talk about the Big 12. We had Oklahoma 49, UCLA 21. This is a game that looked like a fun non-conference game before the start of the season. And then we saw week 1 from UCLA and quickly realized that this might not be a fun game at all. Kyler Murray had a big game, 306 and 3 touchdowns, also ran for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. 5 total touchdowns for him. Oklahoma looks great on defense with 6 sacks and 12 tackles for loss. UCLA on offense, 8 punts, 1 turnover on downs in their first 11 drives. Not great. A lot of work to do for Chip Kelly. Oklahoma is at Iowa State next week looking for a little revenge.
Yeah, I thought Dorian Thompson-Robinson at times made some nice throws against what I think is going to be an improved Oklahoma defense over the course of this season. But he was constantly hurried up, and that's probably not the best way to phrase it. But the actual big takeaway for me is, the Rodney Anderson going down early in this game, returns in street clothes. Early reports are not great as for his future this year, seeing the field. So we hope those reports are misleading, or not misleading, but they're premature and things are going to work out for him and his health. But yeah, Hollywood Brown and CeeDee Lamb are ridiculous. And I'd like to know, Ty, will Kyler Murray's, he's going to the A's, right?
That's
They're
correct.
in the American League.
Yes.
Will his yards per game by the end of the season get him in the top 5 of American League batting averages? So I don't have the batting averages in front of me. We could, but I presume if he's averaging 330 yards, just passing, not even total yardage, because total yardage per game, he's probably winning the average crown.
Right.
Will he finish in the top 5 with his yards per game?
The leading average right now is Mookie Betts. And he's got a 341.
Red Sox, I think?
Red Sox, yeah, outfielder.
Yeah.
He's got 341 as his average. And the 5th best is Christian Yelich from the Brewers, who is batting 316 at time of recording. So he needs to be somewhere between 316 and 341. I would say yes at this point.
So yeah, that would be 316 as the over-under if he finishes in the top 5 AL batting average. Looking at the defenses in the Big 12, I think he's got a pretty good shot, Ty.
Also, somehow Scooter Gannett is hitting 317. We'll move on.
Okay.
TCU 42, SMU 12. This is the battle for the Iron Skillet.
Hell yeah.
This was delayed 2 hours because of lightning. Rain all throughout the first half. The game was just 14-12 at half in favor of TCU. They came out kind of sluggish here. But TCU was able to turn it on. They relied a little bit on Kevontae Turpin to make some big plays. They clearly asserted their will here in the second half and rolled to a 30-point victory. SMU, for their part, has a turnover chalice, which I don't know if you saw pictures of. I'm going to do
a great word to say out loud.
I'm going to do a power ranking of turnover props on our Wednesday show.
What's number 1 for you right now?
Number 1's the throne for Boise State.
I still love the Kennesaw State plank tie.
The throne is up there. The chalice for me is probably number 2. I think Mississippi State has a dog collar, which is a lot of fun. First and foremost, we need a list of all of the different props. Maybe somebody can put that together for us and send them in for Wednesday.
Somebody has to take my suggestion and do the turnover and have apple turnovers in like one of those pink bakery boxes on the sideline. Let's go. Turnover. Let's do it.
TCU has a big one against Ohio State next week in Arlington, which we will
Another
preview.
good example. Yes, another good example for the Horned Frogs. How good is your bad? Sloppy start to this game for TCU, and their good was staying calm, gaining momentum, and even with a not great night for Sean Robinson, to win by 30 is a good bad.
All right, West Virginia 52-17 over Youngstown State. Big game for Will Grier. Texas 28, Tulsa 21. Dan, one quick question: is Texas back?
Yeah, I mean they're back to usual recent Texas. Sure.
Bad news for Texas in this one. Their defense in the fourth quarter was all kinds of Mr. Yuck. This was not fun to watch defensively from Texas in the fourth quarter, but they hold on to win 28-21. Kansas breaks their 46-game road losing streak by beating Central Michigan 31-7. And a big shout out to Puka Williams Jr. from Kansas, who had 125 and 2 scores on the ground. Elsewhere in the Big 12, Oklahoma State with a big win over South Alabama. Texas Tech blanks Lamar 77-0. And Baylor knocks off UTSA by a 37-20 score.
Correct. All correct.
And let's move to the Pac-12 quick. Washington 45-3 over North Dakota. They've got a road game next week against Utah, who knocked off NIU.
A little bit sloppy from Washington in this game.
Yeah.
A little bit sloppy up front on offense, not really able to move the ball on the ground against North Dakota. The defense obviously does a great job against North Dakota. But yeah, in terms of operating like a well-oiled machine ahead of, it's in Salt Lake City, you said, next week?
Yep.
A little bit to be desired from this Washington team, but I'm still pretty confident that this is the best team in the Pac-12.
Speaking of sloppy, Utah 17, NIU 6. This is a direct quote from Kyle Whittingham. Quote, "We're a pretty average football team right now." End quote.
Okay.
17-6. NIU had 6 sacks in this game, 14 tackles for loss. Utah's got to shore that up before Washington comes to town next week. Elsewhere, we had Houston laying it on thick here against Arizona. They led 31-0 at halftime. They ended up winning 45-18. They had 551 total yards, outgained Arizona by 20. Big game for Eric King, who had 4 touchdowns through the air. Also 2 touchdowns on the ground. Ed Oliver with a nice game, really getting in the face of Khalil Tate. Not a great start here for Kevin Sumlin.
This game made me think Derek King had Arizona's defensive coordinator in his ear.
Yeah, right.
Telling him the calls, because Houston came out and smashed them. And it was 31 points in the first half, and it could have been like 45. They dropped open, deep passes. So really cool to see from Houston's offense immediately, stepping up from where they were last year with Kendall Briles. This year, Kendall Briles joins the Cougs. Yeah. I'm just getting my math in order, Ty. Houston's in a really nice place right now. And as you look at the group of 5 and as it sets up in terms of quality New Year's capable teams, Houston's looking more complete, I think, than we thought. Boise State's looking unbelievable. USF we'll see. UCF we'll see. But I like the deep roster of teams right now.
Elsewhere in the Pac-12, Cal, in an ugly game that featured 12 punts and 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles, 3 turnovers on downs, Cal was able to grind it out and win over BYU. So nice win for them. Oregon State wins 48-25 over Southern Utah, 649 yards on offense for Oregon State. Washington State, a really nice defensive effort over San Jose State. They blanked them 31-0. holding San Jose State to just 109 total yards on offense. Nice
San Jose State.
What did I say?
No. I was just sorry. Finish.
I'm done.
Okay. San Jose State's real bad, and really nice effort from Washington State. And I think Oregon has San Jose State next week, but they're not good. They're just not.
And finally, Oregon 62, Portland State 14. Dan, give me like 22 and a half good seconds on this.
I've got about 8 seconds. Justin Herbert, really good. Running backs, pretty good. Defense looks real good. Wide receivers, gonna need a little bit more. New tight end from USF, looks pretty decent.
All right. And elsewhere around college football, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention these games. We already talked about App State beating Charlotte 45-6 in the great game from Zach Thomas, but Boise State runs one up on UConn 62-7.
Yeah.
Nice game for Brett Rippon. Madison Avenue getting it going with 115 and 2 scores on the ground. Worth noting that Boise's got a monster game next week on the road at Oklahoma State, which is one of the featured games that
I can't wait.
Discuss. That's going to be a fun game. Navy scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to win, including a crazy 19-yarder by quarterback Malcolm Perry. They knock off Memphis by a 22-21 score. UCF blanked South Carolina State 38-0. And Army won 38-14 over Liberty, and that's notable because Liberty's punter got ejected for targeting in this game.
He got ejected, and he didn't even attempt to use his arms to tackle. He bisoned him.
Yeah.
He led with his head, and leading with your head is misleading because there was nothing following. It was just his body. That was, if it weren't dangerous to somebody's health, almost comical how penalty-filled that moment was. And I think we mentioned it before, but ECU laying waste to North Carolina.
Yeah. Ooh.
This was a disaster of a team last year. Who am I talking about, Ty? Unclear. Unclear. But in this case, I happen to be talking about ECU. Good for the Pirates, I guess. The only other thing I would add, actually, I don't think I've been anything. I mean, Buffalo beat Temple.
Okay.
And we like Buffalo. We like Anthony Johnson, who you really cavalierly referred to as Big Johnson, which I'm still in protest of. San Diego State, I'm not fully sure. I did not watch this game. I don't know what's going on with the Aztecs. They needed 15 points in the fourth quarter to get away from Sac State. This is a non-FBS team, Sac State. So the Aztecs starting off pretty slow. UNLV, a nice win as they separate themselves from UTEP, who is also not particularly good. I want to focus on one thing for like 9 seconds. Hawaii is 3-0.
Yeah.
And they've put up like 3 miles of offense in those 3 games. Only Rice. I get it. Only Rice. Hawaii's probably going to go to a bowl game. They're going to be exciting as hell to watch. So if you are somebody like Ty, who just physically has trouble sleeping, no matter how comfortable his mattress is, make sure you watch some Hawaii. They are super exciting to watch. And we mentioned Colorado State, Mizzou, you mentioned with Wyoming, a disappointing start of the season for Wyoming, but Hawaii, very quietly, because of the time of their kickoffs. Wow, one of the more fun stories of the season.
All right. Congratulations to Maddie K and Zeke for AU, both of whom had 10 out of 10.
Damn.
On the Pick'em pool through 2 weeks. We've got thousands of Verballers feeling the unholy wrath of one Zach Conrath. He leads by 2 games in the Pick'em pool. Has got 18 games correct in 2 weeks.
Real quick, Ty, can I give some dudes some?
Who we got, Dan?
I just want to reinforce Laviska Shenault, receiver extraordinaire for Colorado, Benny Snell for Kentucky, Kellen Mond, Kendrick Rogers, a.k.a. Kendrick Lamore, Braden Mann, insulting the boot is a bootable offense, boot master, supreme punter for Texas A&M, N'Keal Harry with his touchdown and essentially game-winning touchdown for ASU, Devlin Hodges, we mentioned for Samford, Zach Thomas, Adrian Martinez, KJ Hamler, Karan Higdon, Mason Fine. Huge game again for North Texas. Jawan Taylor, linebacker, Georgia, picked up the too soon celebration pick 6 ball and scored the touchdown. to reinforce the pick six for Georgia. So a heads up play from him. Antoine Winfield must be said again, that play. Terrence Horn, 2 kickoff return touchdowns. And then once again, Kylan Hill for Mississippi State. Hell of a game on the ground.
All right, there you have it. Thank you to everyone who followed along. This is week 2. College football now officially in the books. We will be back on Wednesday to discuss what I think is a loaded week 3. A loaded week 3.
So fun.
Going to be a lot of fun here. Don't forget to check us out at solidverbal.com. Go to solidverbal.com/pick'em to get your pick'em entries in. You got to enter once a week. We will keep tabs on who's doing well and who isn't. Please do subscribe by going on out to our website, solidverbal.com, and clicking on the listen button, where you can find everything you need to know about how you can get us automatically delivered to your podcast app of choice. And don't forget, you can also find us out on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on our subreddit created for Verballers by Verballers. That's at reddit.com/r/solidverbal. Daniel, enjoy the rest of your time in Chicago, okay?
Ty, I have about 16 hours left here.
For that guy...
My concluding statement, is go Buffs. That's my concluding statement.
For that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, in Chicago, Illinois. From myself, Ty Hildenbrand, over here in Eastern PA. Thanks again for tuning into the show. We'll catch you all on Wednesday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.